got Danielle Williams here from Amelia Risk Insurance, and we've been planning to do this for a while. Danielle has been so helpful to a lot of the brands in our space, and I really wanted to do a longer form session with her because her specialty is product liability insurance. And I think it's one of these areas that everybody wants to know about. Nobody really knows about it, or when they need it, why it's important. And so today we have Danielle here, and she's going to tell us all about it. Maybe just before we dive in, can you just tell us a little bit about your background, and then I'm going to start asking so many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So, I've been an insurance broker for about 10 years, and I've been working with startups the entire time. I actually started my career in working with technology companies, and I, about 5 years ago, started working with CPG. And it's really been my passion. I love seeing my clients' products on the shelves at the grocery store. I like insuring what I like to buy. So, natural fit.
That sounds good. I don't know why, but I was just imagining a scenario in my head where like you eat something and something goes wrong and you file a lawsuit and you're the one that insured them, and who knows, you're suing yourself. All right. Anyways, back on track. So the first, basically I just have a bunch of like logical ordered questions of, okay, I'm a brand and I'm just starting out and I've just like figured out, I've got this recipe and I've made it in the kitchen, and now I'm figuring out like, okay, I'm going to make this maybe with a co-packer or just somehow at scale and just try to start, sending samples out and then get on shelf. Mm-hmm. When do I need to start thinking about product liability insurance, and probably, explain what exactly it is?
Yeah. So this is a big one because product liability is the most important piece of the CPG insurance program, because it insures the product and the liability that comes with people using your product, consuming the product, any part of that, right? It effectively covers bodily injury and property damage from the use or consumption of your product. So for many CPG companies, it's consumption. So that means your product made me feel sick. I chipped my tooth. I cut my hand opening the bottle. My 4-year-old ate all the sunscreen and got sick, and we landed in the ER. Those are the types of things that we see. Those are the types of things that people sue for. And your product liability policy defends against that and pays the liability from that. So it's a very important thing. I think, what I tell folks is the most conservative thing you can do is get product liability by the time you have product in people's hands. That's ideal because that's when your exposure is there.
And when you interestingly say by when you get product in people's hands, are you talking about consumers, or what about even like you're starting up and giving it to, investors or your friends and family? And do you need it at that point?
That's a gray area. I mean, yes, the risk manager in me says yes. You just never know, right? And you don't know what could happen. So when you should start thinking about it is months before that happens, because depending on your product, it could take weeks and sometimes months to get coverage. So it usually doesn't take that long, but start thinking about this stuff before you launch. And I think insurance is one of those areas where it's not a very known thing for a lot of business owners, and so it often comes kind of late in the game.
Okay, and just kind of like cutting to the chase because we've got, I think, a few people watching. A really good idea is just to get in touch with Danielle and ask her for a consultation, because she'll just tell you how much it would cost, and I think it's a lot less than you probably would imagine it would be. So, but we'll keep diving into a lot of what's actually in the nitty gritty for it. So you said it's a gray area. Like you can decide if you want to take the risk probably when you're just getting into a few people's hands, and maybe you would think about like, is there a lot of risk in this product? Is it, a flavored water? I don't know, something that might just be kind of inoffensive, versus this is a new ingredient, or I'm doing something new with it, or it doesn't sit that well. It's not very well preserved or something, right? Where you would maybe want to be a little more careful. But it sounds like definitely by the time you're selling it to people, you really need a policy at that point. And I guess one question that I hear from a lot of people is, I'm working with a co-man. don't they cover that for me? Who covers what there? Do you definitely need your own policy? Should they have one? Should they have talked to you about it?
So great question. I get this a lot too. The moral of the story here is that everybody needs their own insurance. You cannot rely on someone else's insurance for your brand. The fact of the matter is that, if I, Danielle Williams, go to Target and I buy your canned CBD coffee and I come home and I consume it and I get really ill from it, I'm not going to go figure out who your co-manufacturer was to sue them. I'm going to sue you and probably Target too. Don't mean to name drop Target, but I'm going to definitely sue the brand, and I'm going to probably sue the retailer. And that's why you need that. So if your brand is sued, you need insurance to protect.
You should have insurance, but in some cases, like if you were getting sued by somebody, you might also have some claim with your co-packer if it was their fault, right? And you had some stipulation on that. But
yeah, and I actually had a claim where this got really hairy with the co-manufacturer, with an independent contractor that the client and the brand had hired to go consult with the co-manufacturer, and basically there were metal shavings in the peanut butter, which isn't where you want them. And how it all shakes out on the back end is really up to a lot of lawyers, and it will shake out, right? You want to have good, strong contracts, but you have to defend yourself from these claims, and that's what your insurance is for.
Got it. Okay. And by the way, I see a few people are watching. If you guys have any questions for Danielle, please drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I am so curious about this topic, and I will just keep firing away. So, I mean, I know you do tons of consultations with people who are just starting out. Are there some other really common questions that they are typically asking you, or like the reason why they get in touch with you?
A lot of it is contractually required. So usually it's something has come up. They want to get into a store. They want to get on a shelf. And those folks, those vendors are requiring that they carry insurance. Many don't know what they need. They don't know why they need it. They're not sure what they need and when. So, that's the thing, is that as a startup especially, you don't need every insurance policy right away. You do need some stuff up front, and you need some things later on. And there's going to be some things that, the factors in that are like, what's your risk tolerance? Are you okay with not insuring every little last thing? And the other thing is going to be, what is your unique situation, right? What is your product? What's your distribution look like? Did you get outside funding? Those are the things that are going to sort of matter in determining how and when you get things. And then if you have employees, some things are just required if you have employees. So yeah.
So give me a ballpark. I know it always is going to depend on a lot of those factors you just mentioned about your tolerance, and are you going to cover every single thing? But can you give me okay, here is like the bare minimum of what it might be if you're in a really safe, known quantity product category, and you're doing kind of the minimum, up to like, this is a dicey area and you're going to need a lot of full coverage. Like, how much would those two different packages cost? What's just a really broad range of what brands should expect?
Yeah. So it is the hardest question that I get. And it's the most common question that I get, because it all comes down to price. So if you are in a very vanilla space and you are doing maybe just canned sparkling water, not even a flavor, just a very run-of-the-mill stuff.
That sounds delicious.
You're a startup and you're doing, let's say, less than 250 grand a year. You're going to be paying maybe $1,000 a year for insurance, for this type of insurance, product liability, and maybe a little bit of property coverage for your inventory. If you're baby food, you are going, which is the most high risk category, as we can all imagine, you're going to be paying thousands of dollars, maybe between 5 and 10. It depends on what your controls are. It depends on what your revenue is. Most of this is dependent primarily on revenue. So
when you get up to those big, like your baby food company is doing really well, and you're already, selling, a couple mil, 5, 10 in revenue per year, is it really, it still could be as low as $10,000, something like that? Is that right?
Probably not that low.
Okay, so it definitely is a sliding scale, and it's going
Yeah.
to be tied basically to your revenue and the category of product that you're in, just basically how risky it is.
Right. And one thing too, and I tell my clients this that are in riskier areas, and unfortunately, that includes like nutraceuticals and dietary supplements, which is really tough because yeah, that
What's a nutraceutical again?
I'm sorry.
What's a nutraceutical?
Well, so like anything that's like an adaptogen or a functional, I'm talking about like functional drinks or bars or powders that you add to your coffee or your water. Anything that's in that space is going to be a little bit difficult from an insurance perspective. A lot of insurers don't want to write it. And I tell my clients sometimes it's like the more natural the product is, the harder it is from an insurance perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And one thing that's going against you, as your revenue increases, startups have it tough. As your revenue increases, the premium increases, and then you have more insurance companies that are more willing to write this, and because there's more premium there. At a very small level, when there's not a whole lot of premium on the books, underwriters aren't going to take a ton of time to underwrite something that risky.
Got it. Okay. Well, I know that you've helped a lot of people out of kind of weird policies that they somehow ended up in, which, it makes sense to me because I think people don't know about this world, and then maybe someone tells them they have to get it and they go and ask somebody, they don't know a lot of people, and they pick up a policy. What are some examples of the wrong policy that you might get, or like how have you really helped people get out of something that they shouldn't have been in?
Yeah. So actually I helped a gal from the startup CPG community. She had a policy. So this is what I do for people. I take a look at their policies and I look through them and I find the areas that are perhaps problematic or ways that we can improve it. There are some horror stories. So there's one where it was like a garlic dip. And she had a products liability policy that in the list of forms and endorsements, there was an exclusion for products liability. So, it's a general liability policy, which includes X, Y, Z, and then later Z is excluded. So it's not good. I don't know, how that happened. It does happen a lot.
It's good if you're the insurance company.
Yeah, right. Which is why people don't trust insurance, but that's why you get a good broker. So, but that's one of the most common things that I see is ingredient exclusions that have something my client needs. And so one example, I had a former client of mine is a very large sports drink company that's like a competitor to Gatorade. And when we were marketing their renewal, they spend a couple $100,000 in premium. And there was one insurance company that was maybe $100,000 less than the next. And I was thinking, what's going on here? And it's because there was an ingredient excluded from the policy that is in their drink. And it's a good ingredient. It's not like one of the nasty ones. But that exclusion would effectively negate all the coverage.
Because if the ingredient is in your product, then it's not like if that is the ingredient that actually causes the issue.
Yeah, it's no, you have this in your drink. Okay, well, we're not covering that product. So
it's so sneaky.
Yeah, okay. It can be.
I have so many questions. You mentioned before insuring your inventory. So I guess I don't totally know this. I think a lot of what you do is the product liability insurance, but also there is, insuring your inventory is part of that. Is there other stuff that you really focus on that I don't know about?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What are the top couple of things that, because I'm sure it'll be really relevant to any brands who are watching and are just kind of wondering what top things they should be thinking about?
Yeah. So really, a CPG company, as many companies, are going to need various things along the way. And some point when you grow so large, your insurance program is going to be made up of, maybe 10 policies covering various things. So there's the employment related ones like workers' compensation. There's employment practices liability. There's property related ones like it can be property. It can be employee theft, crime. It can be coverage for your inventory. So we call that stock throughput or perhaps a cargo policy. There's cyber liability. And there's product recall. So in the event that you are involved in a recall, those policies pay for you to take product off the shelf, investigate.
What's the if you like mislabel your product in one of these like you get sued by like some crazy consumer class action suit, whatever it is. What policy would you be activating?
Well, it depends on what happened. So if the mislabel could,
like a false claim, or like, hey, you said it had this much sugar, but it's actually 25% more.
That is another really gray area. That's false advertising. Most policies exclude false advertising. That's a really tough one. The moral of the story there is get a really good lawyer to do your labels, because false advertising is most of the time excluded. But if you use the words fresh and natural and you're sued because they're like, well, it wasn't natural, that's a really tough one. Most of the standard issue policies are not going to cover that type of lawsuit. That's a tough one. But if you had a mislabel and it said vegan and it got on the wrong product and that product was in fact not vegan, that could trigger a recall, and your recall policy could cover that because it would be impending bodily injury or property damage. So that policy may cover that type of thing if there were a chance that somebody had a bodily injury if they consumed that product.
Got it. And I know I've seen some of the like major retailers might even have a policy that says if something happens and you guys can't supply the product to us, you're gonna be paying us basically for like foregone sales. Are there any policies that cover stuff like that, or have you seen that a lot?
Yeah, and it depends on for what. So in the case of recall, the recall policies come in all shapes and sizes, as most insurance policies do, actually. So there's a whole scale of how robust or how narrow those policies might be. A really good recall policy has loss of income, including third-party loss of income. So Target or Starbucks or Safeway, who stocks your product, if there was a recall. But if you couldn't get product to them because you're just behind on production, that's not going to be an insurable loss.
Right. Okay.
They're just business losses, and some things are insurable, right?
So, okay. So tell me again about insuring your inventory. I think that was in one of the things that you just covered, but I just want to make sure I got it. So what is that exactly?
So if your inventory, if there's damage or theft or physical loss to your product itself, you can get insurance on that. Just like you can get insurance on, your home or your apartment and the contents inside, you can get insurance on all of your product sitting in a warehouse, or the product on the truck that's being driven across many states, right?
Who would elect for that most often? Is it like people who just have really high value inventory on a per gram basis or something, or who typically is most interested in those, or is it another one of those things where the retailer tells you need to go get it?
So the retailer typically doesn't tell you that you need to get it because it's your product and it would be your loss. No one really cares if you have it or not, depending on the contract. So the people who do it are folks that are starting to think about their supply chain and starting to concern themselves like, okay, wait, I just spent all this money to produce all of this product and it's sitting here, and then I have one big shipment and it's coming here, and what happens if the truck catches on fire? That's what people start thinking about. And again, it's this area where, what's your risk tolerance? Some people don't buy it right away. Some people do. It's not incredibly expensive, but some of the things that you want to think about are how big are your production runs? How much do you transfer in any given trip? How much of your product is on a truck? And if something happened to the location, at the co-manufacturer after it's finished, or it's on the truck, or it's sitting at an Amazon distribution warehouse, if something happens to that, how far back are you set? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to recover from that? Is it just a bad day because you lost a couple grand, or is it like everything you put in? So, and And that's how you can insure it, right? And the most robust way is with a stock throughput policy or a cargo policy, and that covers your inventory in whatever stage. So it's raw materials in process, finished stock. It has a very favorable valuation. So like finished stock is covered at selling price, which is better than replacement cost, and it covers it at locations, so physical locations, but also while in transit. And most claims happen at loading and unloading. So it's important to have a cargo policy or stock throughput policy that covers that moment and therefore eliminates a gap in coverage.
Got it. Okay, cool. So I think I definitely have heard of people going right to the insurance companies and asking them for a policy. And I'm thinking about some of the stuff we've just talked about and imagining all of the litany of things that could go wrong. Like, one, you're talking to somebody that might not understand your business and not really know how to give you a policy that makes sense. They might give you a bunch of stuff you don't need. Or two, like, does each entrepreneur in this space really have the background to know, is the X, Y, and Z that I need, or did they just take out the thing that I especially do need? So, for me, it makes, like, I would personally probably not spend the time to try to become an insurance expert myself. And I would make sense to a broker like you guys, because it's not a ton of money for these policies, right? It's not so much money where it's maybe not going to really be worth your time to try and totally self-serve this. But what are the other benefits of going through you or another broker versus trying to do it yourself, or obviously just not doing it?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And so, first I'm going to say I'm biased because I am a broker, but you named a lot of the reasons. Actually, I would say that first and foremost, it is that you have an advocate. So a broker works for the client, the insured, as we call it. And my job is to represent the insured to the insurance company. I'm the insured's advocate, not the insurance companies. And, I'm not trying to make this sound sinister. Insurers are great. We have great relationships with them. But there is an inverse, there's a conflicting goal there, right? An insurance company doesn't want to pay claims, and the insured wants the broadest policy possible. So my job is to find that balance of how are we going to get the most coverage with the fewest exclusions at the best price. And that's my job. My job is to go to multiple insurance companies, find the best product at the best price, and be the insured's advocate. And then there's expertise, right? I mean, insurance is a fairly opaque industry, I think. And there's not a lot of insight as a consumer into how to choose these policies, how to read the policies. I mean, I've been doing it for 10 years and I still have to sit down and read the policies and find the things that I'm looking for. And sometimes it takes a while. And so, having a broker, that's the importance of it, because when you're running a business, you cannot be an expert in areas. And then, in the pricing thing. So I get this a lot too, because I think people do believe that it's cheaper if I go directly. And sometimes it might be. There are instances of that. But overall, the distribution of insurance is set up to be such that the broker is paid by the insurance company, and the pricing is reflective of that competitive edge, right? And so a consumer isn't like paying an extra percentage just to go through the broker and pay the broker. It's not always the rule, but it's most of the time the rule that it's just as cost effective to use a broker.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. If anyone has any comments or questions from the LinkedIn Live group, please do post if you do, because I'm sure there are just a lot of questions out there about this topic. So I guess, for me though, I just have one more question I'd love to talk to you about, which is I just love seeing people go off and start their own thing. And can you just tell us a little bit more about Amelia Risk Insurance? I think you have a co-founder also, right? And you guys kind of decided to go off and do your own thing. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So my co-founder, Liz, we worked together at the same firm for 9 years. well, I guess we both started 9 years ago at that firm. And I worked for a large brokerage, and I learned a lot there. And it was, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of collaboration among brokers and things like that. But ultimately, Liz and I looked around and we saw that there's a lot of consolidation within the insurance industry, which means that many of the small independent brokers are being bought by larger ones. Some of the things that we wanted to achieve with Amelia Risk was being able to service startups in a way that was really meaningful, because startups need a lot of help, and oftentimes you're working with a first-time buyer of insurance. And again, like I said, it's an opaque industry, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So we really wanted to be able to provide a hands-on service and true risk management for startups. And we wanted to do it by using the most progressive technology out there and really upgrading the client experience with insurance, because I know that it's no secret that insurance is a little bit technologically behind. So we're really trying to bring it up to speed and to be able to give startups what they need, because they do need risk management advice,
Yeah. And then I guess, well, more of just like a general business question for you. So I am so happy that you're part of the startup CPG community. I love having you in the group because people always ask questions about product liability insurance. Like, voila, here's an expert. Perfect. So I really appreciate you coming to the events and sharing your knowledge. I'm curious how people typically find you. Like, I'm sure you have a lot of referral business or, kind of repeat business, prior clients, word of mouth, like sharing. But how do you guys typically find new clients, or do you have specific growth plans to find new ones and new horizons?
Yeah. So, a lot of it is referral based. When we were first starting this, I reached out to a lot of folks, most of which doesn't go answered, but that's the name of the game, right? And my thing is, I really like working with people whose products I like. So a lot of times I reach out to people who I just think have a really cool product and I would want it in my home. And I reach out to them and I usually say, hey, look, I just want to see if you need any help. And oftentimes that starts with just a consultation and looking at their insurance. I've gotten sometimes that people are happy with their broker, and I think that that's wonderful. Sometimes I wish I were that broker, but I think it's great when people have a relationship that they really like. So that's what I'm trying to build. And yeah, we love working with startup and CPG companies, and so it's a very natural fit. I think growth plans TBD. We're always looking for strategic partners, but a lot of this business is word of mouth, because it is a hard area, right? It's a relationship business, and you really have to trust the broker that you're working with, because it's not.
Who's a strategic partner for you? Like, if a strategic partner is watching this and they might not even know that they could be one, who would that be?
Investors are great, because that usually means that there's some oomph to this, right? And that means the product is probably going to take off pretty quickly. And that's a point where investors want to make sure that that they have the right advisory team for their portfolio company. So that's one. Associations like Startup CPG are great. Lawyers can be great strategic partners. We send a lot of referrals back and forth. So there's a lot.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure I totally understand. William, actually, as you were saying that, just was making a comment about VCs looking at CPGs as attractive portfolio companies and recommending startups engage in PEOs. I'm not. I don't know a ton about PEOs, to be honest. I don't know if Danielle does.
Yeah. I do. So PEOs are professional employer organizations. So that's like TriNet, JustWorks, Gusto, ADP, companies like that. So they do handle the employment related stuff. And we work actually quite well with PEOs. It means we don't do some of the other things, like we don't do benefits and we don't do workers' comp, and we might not do employment practices liability, because those are things that the PEO is handling. But most PEOs, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've worked alongside them quite a bit. Most of them don't do property and casualty, which is all the other stuff like product liability and property and D&O and, all of those other sort of the commercial insurance part. They do the
interesting
related stuff.
Cool. And so I guess I was reading that as you were talking, but I guess probably like VCs, PE funds would also be good channel partners for you. Cool. Okay. Well, if anybody knows some good partners for Danielle, pass the word along. Cool. Anything that I didn't ask you that you think is important for people to know? I know I got a lot of, every time you said that's a hard question, I felt like I was doing a good job.
Yeah. There's, no, those are good questions though. And they come up a lot. Yeah. I mean, I think that the only thing I would say is just have a conversation. I think, as I mentioned, I've been a broker for 10 years. I'm used to people not wanting to talk about insurance. I get that. I think that there's definitely a feeling of, if I talk to this person, I'm going to be like locked in and they're going to like contact me forever. Or you're obligated in some way. And, I would say that just having a conversation and figuring out what is insurance, when do I need it? Why do I need it? Who do I need it from? And knowing that while I'm going to recommend very conservative risk management choices and robust options, because I believe in being coverage first, it's your choice at the end of the day, what you buy and what you don't buy. And I'm just here to sort of explain it to you,
Cool. Okay. And then bonus question, have you like connected with any really cool brands, not ones that you're necessarily representing, but discovered any cool new products through the startup CPG community, or, just heard about any cool new innovations that you're especially excited about?
Yeah. So I have coined that 2020 is the year of the mushroom. I'm getting a lot of mushroom coffees, mushroom teas. I had no idea that it was, similar to coffee in the stimulation, but that you don't typically get jitters or a crash. I've had a couple clients in that area, which has been really exciting. Canned coffee is another one. I mean, who doesn't like canned coffee? Getting a couple really cool kind of handcrafted cocktails direct to consumer, which is really exciting, especially in 2020 in this pandemic when we all want to have some more excitement at home. So yeah, that's the thing. Is like these.
I know. I'm drinking a lot too. It's fine. No, but that's cool. Yeah, I've been really interested to explore that space as well. And I guess I'm sure the Pitch 2 winner was Steeped. That it's a pretty cool concept because you can just ship the craft cocktail tea bag to the house instead of shipping all the liquid and then kind of mix it up with so many cool things out there. Mark Nathan, I saw, just dropped a cool link. I can't open it right now, but it sounds like he's got some more information on PEOs for people. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, Danielle, this has been super fun. I love talking to you because it's just such a cool perspective to get. I feel like I just got my 101 on liability insurance. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. And I hope people will join us at our holiday party Wednesday evening, and look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.